attack. Dear viewers, by this we come to the end of the 9 a.m. top stories here on RTV International. For more news updates, please log on to our website, www.9international.net. Signing off for the crew and myself, this is Karim Bernardine, and this is goodbye.
الرئيس جمال عبد الناصر عند وصوله الى ميدان الجمهوريه لحضور اكبر عرض عسكري في تاريخ مصر الحديث. استفرد في ارض الميدان قوات رمزيه تمثل مختلف وحدات الجيش المصري لتحيه الرئيس عند وصوله. وقف الرئيس جمال عبد الناصر واللواء عبد الحكيم عامر وزير العربية والقائد العام للقوات المسلحة ورؤساء هيئة ارشاد حرب القوات المصرية. شهد العرض ضيوف مصر واعضاء مجلس الثورة والوزراء ورجال الصلح السياسي العربي والاجنبي. تقدمت العرض وحدات رمزية تمثل جيوش الدول العربية. المملكة الأردنية الهاشمية، الجمهورية السودانية، الجمهورية السورية، المملكة العربية السعودية، الجمهورية اللبنانية، المملكة الليبية المتحدة، المملكة المتوكلية اليمنية. إن هذه الوحدات ترمز إلى القوى الجديدة الساهرة على حماية القومية العربية.
A company in Egypt is acquiring and renovating old buildings in a project they say will help bring back the glory days of Cairo's historic downtown area. Al-Ismailia for Real Estate Investment has bought prime downtown real estate in an attempt to revitalize the center of the capital city through preserving the architectural grandeur of downtown while celebrating Cairo's dynamic urban fabric. Downtown Cairo, largely built between the late 19th and early 20th century, was once heralded as a place of architectural sophistication, but years of neglect have left many of the old buildings in a state of despair. The Ismailiyya group have already built up a number of buildings, including Cinema Radio, located on Talat Harb Street, one of the busiest streets in downtown Cairo, and Cinema Radio is a 1,500 square meter theater that was once a prestigious venue to premiere Egyptian movies. Now Al-Ismailiyya have begun a plan to renovate it. Their general manager Ahmed Hilmi said that the company's vision is modeled on other urban regeneration projects from across the world. The company buys properties and then rents them out to cover the costs of refurbishment.
Discussion in today's episode of the Breakfast Show, and as we had mentioned earlier in the beginning of this episode, that we're going to be talking about the latest move by the Egyptian cabinet approving the constituency's law, and then this law is pending the ratification from President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, and then after that it is expected that the dates or that the campaigning will be open, and this will pave the way for the parliamentary elections, the third and final step in the political roadmap that has been put forth by the Egyptian government post-June 30th revolution. And to discuss this issue thoroughly, we're most delighted to be joined in the studio by Mr. Mehna, and he's a professor of economics and political science. First of all, good morning to you, sir, and thank you for joining us.
So first of all, talking about the electoral constituencies law, some people are with, some people are against, and definitely will never satisfy the whole nation. Let me put it like this. But as an expert, how do you see it so far during this period of time?
Okay, the beauty or the benefit of the law that it's come after a revolution, June 30th, and wiping out the fascist system that really controlled Egypt for a year. The advantage here, we're building a new democratic model that we never had. In the past, we used to import democratic models that used in the West, but due to cultural and social dynamics in our society, including religion, languages, etc., we never really had a political or a democratic model that suit us. So I think Egypt for the first time builds its own democratic model that can follow and develop. So it is a learning curve. As you kindly mentioned, we'll never be able to please everyone, but it is definitely a right step on the way. This is the third pillar of the roadmap, and basically it here relies or depends on the Egyptians to participate. The negativity and being passive is no longer acceptable, because Egypt is taking its first step to a new phase of its life really in the 21st century, not just an economic reform or administrative reform, it's a political reform that putting Egypt on a new roadmap for the entire world.
So if you can tell us how different is this electoral law from the previous ones?
Okay, the representation in the previous ones depend a lot on the party lists. The advantage here, I think, and some people see that as a negative aspect, I see it as a positive.
And bribery will factor in.
That's right. The party lists on this law only amounts to 4 constituencies. Of a total of 120
members through that, and I'll give you the breakdown of even there will be no domination from one aspect of society or one side of society compared to 420 individual candidates. So I think the advantage of the law, it gives power to individual candidates to prevent bribery, influencing people's opinion. There will be some of the problems. There will be no political majority in parliament, which basically it will be a loose kind of parliament in terms of members, and can be influenced by external powers like the government.
But don't you think, sir, that this will make it fragmented?
It is going to be fragmented, but the advantage here is it's enabling or empowering Egyptians to participate. Unlike in the party system, you wouldn't be able to participate unless you are an active member of a party. The problem with this, again, you've got 87 political parties or registered political parties on top of the all groups like Tamard and the rest of them. But the fact here, they're all very poor and they've got no support on the ground level. So in terms of Egyptian participation, citizen participation, Egyptians will not be able to participate actively on political parties because they're already weak. They don't have any clear ideologies, they don't have any clear programs. So with the Egyptians, it's the best of both worlds, if you like. It's not 100% perfect, but it is the best to enable Egyptians to participate on an individual capacity, help them to participate, and then we're going to have a second row and third row of leaders and representatives of constituency. The problem, again, as we said, there will be no political majority. It will depend a lot in the individual system on government favors, because there's no powers to force government members to do projects or to amend law. So because it's very fragmented, as you said. But it is a step on the way, and this is better than having it fully on a political system.
So that there are many talks when it comes to border government rates, and just as we mentioned, we have now 5 more constituencies, right? So talking about this, what are the main challenges of these government rates? Why all these controversial?
When we look at dividing constituencies or issue to govern that, number one is the number of citizens that are eligible for voting, and secondly the distribution. Yeah, that's right. So we've got over 72% of these members actually living in the Delta area. So it's quite difficult to actually divide. They're looking at areas that are very crowded with voters and candidates, and give them more constituencies just to make it easier for individuals to vote, and also easier for candidates to promote themselves. But we've got, as you mentioned, the border cities and the border provinces. A few months ago they started the redesigning of the Egyptian provinces, and I think it clashed here with the law of the dividing the constituencies or the elections law in general. Because of the amount of people living on the border cities, you cannot have provinces that basically only have in terms of citizens 300,000 people. So it's going to be unfair in terms of distribution. So they put that on hold till the next parliament. And as I said, when we were discussing it, the redesigning of the provinces and the redistribution of the population map was actually on the original plan of the second cross, which was submitted to President Sisi 4 years ago when he was on national security, and then the Minister of Defense was put 3 years for it.
So it's a 3-year plan.
It is a 3-year plan to redesign the provinces, transfer the capital and move the capital, and then redesign the population map to take people out of the Delta. So at the moment there will be some problems that we'll be facing in this election. There will be also a problem in terms of how the voter actually selects his own candidate. Because in the past we used to rely on reputation. It is a good man, it is a rich man.
But in such an extent we have the same, because just you were mentioning this of air, talking about how there are certain families, for example, in Egypt, they do not belong to National Democratic Party or to any other party. Maybe they talked to some parties, but on reality,
there's no reality to any particular ideology.
It has to do with the family, starting from the very predecessors.
That's right.
And started to
And it was really linked to business. It's the way that was actually Parliament was linked in the past. In the past, if you look at the 60s and 70s, it was linked to the people that are well reputed, they come from large families, and it's still in some areas, particularly in Upper Egypt, still runs the same. It's about business, it's about financial power, it's about social power, but this is going to change because that's not democracy. Democracy basically accepts somebody like Obama, comes from a previously disadvantaged people and becomes a president. This is what we're moving towards. But unfortunately, as I said earlier, we never had a democratic model that we can follow. So now we're building our own. There will be some errors, there will be some problems. Certain areas will be underrepresented because of family power.
But do you think that these flaws can go up to the level of making the votes vote? Or not to this extent?
Not to this extent, but the difficulty I think that the voters will face is the return of the national party, the candidates that will have the social and financial powers, the return of some areas of some regions voting for the Brotherhood, because they announced that they officially going to participate in elections in 10 provinces with 10 governorates. So this is really a risk of going back to the old system.
This is a contradiction in itself in their stances, because I believe that the now banned Muslim Brotherhood has said that they do not recognize the whole process and they are boycotting, and now so there's a contradiction.
There is a contradiction.
They always say this.
Sorry?
They always say this when it comes to boycotting, but again, let me ask about, if we are talking about the Brotherhood organization or the National Democratic Party, all these parties, how many people belong to such parties, for example?
You have a lot of people, but they're actually hidden.
But you can never control it.
No, especially on an individual system.
Yes,
I believe if the political isolation law was implemented, this would have...
you cannot prove it.
You can't prove it because you can only prove when it comes to leaders. But other than that, you can't because, as I said,
as long as they are not involved in...
That's right. And you get a lot of groups that are coming out now, Brotherhood without violence, Brotherhood without, terrorism, anything like that. So you can never really prove it. And we see that from Abdul Fatah, when he was actually nominated again for presidency. He was a Muslim Brotherhood and then turns against them, and then they say, it's all a play. So as Lesha said, I think it's very difficult to control it, and particularly with the individual system in terms of elections, very hard, because we rely on two things, mainly according to the Egyptian culture that we never participated actively in voting, social and financial powers. So you might have people skipping the system and going through. But on the party list, you can control it because you know the background of this person at least. But in an individual system, you cannot control it, and again, it's going to rely and depend mainly on citizens in that particular region. And if you have the support in terms of families, anything like that, they will vote for him, so you're going to have a return of old systems. But the guarantee here is the Egyptian people that they're willing to come out and go to Tahrir Square at any time if the system does not really go back to the demands of the revolution.
So do you believe that the potential participants or the candidates are indeed ready for the parliament, and they're ready, they know what they have in the
Yeah, but no, we're not ready. In terms of candidates, we're not ready. In terms of citizens, we're not ready. Because in terms of candidates, I don't know really the job description of a parliamentary candidate. It is a kind of it's a catch-22 really. Would you participate or just leave it? Citizens themselves used to rely on candidates to help them improve their kids, support them or give them some services from the government, develop the area. That's not his job.
What is the real? Because I always believe that this is the main problem of the parliament, because we don't know the job description of the member himself. We always believe that he has to give more yes,
that's right. Okay, the main jobs of the parliament candidate, one thing is drafting law. Number two is the link between his region and the government.
I want for the performance of the government.
That's right. He's my voice as a citizen on the government level. And I think it's going to change a lot with the implementation of a decentralized system, an administrative system, and now implementing the region director and above the governor. and then 5 governments below each region. So this is going to change again because you're going to have a government on the province level. So that's a full implementation of decentralization. But again, does the citizen know the job description, or at least a brief job description of the candidate, and does the candidate really know? Sometimes candidates will have to fight for the region to spend money, for example, on schools and stuff like that. This is really to use it for a promotion, just for people to know him, because we still have that culture, as we were talking about it earlier. We as citizens still don't know the job description, and therefore we ask more from the candidates. It's actually not his job at all. His job is to draft the law and be the link between the citizens on a ground level and the government.
And for the member himself, he just ignores his main duties just to satisfy the people in order to be nominated and forever in the parliament.
It creates a link on a business site. Establish a company and then write a exactly. So here and then write the contracts on somebody else's name and create that link.
Do you believe this is not going to take place anymore? This will be completely...
No, it will take place.
But to a certain limit or to a certain extent.
Because there's a loophole here. Because all you need to do is just transfer the ownership of the company to somebody from the family, and it's done. So it's quite easy, and Mubarak is to do that. All of them, if you look at, without mentioning names, you look at people that were in parliaments.
They were not involved directly with the business. They had people backing them up.
That's right, but you had a lot of them also business people. But if you actually...
Someone who is running the whole issue.
Exactly, but in terms of paperwork, when you come and investigate, there's nothing in his name. So there is a loophole. And here we've got about 19 departments that are responsible for investigation, corruption, financial and administrative corruption, but in the end we number 14 on the top of the list of the most corrupted nations, and Egypt on number 140, 167 nations in terms of the least transparent countries. So corruption is going to continue until there's a major reform for the administrative system. Take out people that contributed to the corruption of Egypt and the smuggling of its resources and money.
But how do you see the role of the parties in the future? Because again, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but talking about the number of parties that we have in Egypt, some people say that this is healthy, but I don't believe so, because this is something like fragmentation. You have a lot of people, each one wants to do something on his own way, and still the problem in Egypt that each one wants to take the credit. No one is thinking about the benefit of the nation or the country. We don't have the teamwork.
That's right.
And the main issue in the very beginning that all of the parties, they refused to merge and work together. Even those who were trying to run to the presidential elections, they refused, and each one wanted to be the president.
Absolutely. You summarized it in a teamwork. I was going to say it's a collective thinking we don't have. And it's part of the culture that we grew up implementing. I distrust you, you distrust me, and this is how it's going. And if you look at qualified to be a proper developmental programs for these parties, they still distrust each other, and they still, everyone thinks he's the one that can bring Egypt to the next level, but all of them are quite weak. They don't have any creative thinking in what they're doing, because they have a major job in spreading awareness. What have you done in the last 4 years in terms of uplifting the standards of living, changing the awareness of people, creating a political culture of how Egyptians should vote, how Egyptians should really help Egypt go to the next level? They're not doing that. They're very busy with their own ideologies and agenda to get at least seats. And now we see a lot of numbers coming out that you have to get at least 131,000 seats to win a seat. So, and the coalitions that are going in now, you've got 4 major coalitions all looking at getting seats. 10 or 12 parties all getting at least 1 seat to be represented in parliament. So there's no collective thinking, and I think in that area it's going to take us back to the advantage of having an individual system rather than a political system, because political system, if they gather in a coalition, they can bring the entire country down, because it's all hidden agendas. But individual, it's very hard to gather them around a wrong ideology. But political parties, you can have political parties that gather in coalitions and bring back the national party.
So if you just have, for example, four parties, strong parties, knowing exactly what they are doing, regardless who is presented. I mean,
absolutely. What you say is part of the second crossing mega plan that was presented to the government and President Sisi. It says remove all parties. We got 87 parties and groups.
Just evaluation.
Now all of them have to be removed. Absolutely, deregistered and registered 3. You've got 2 main parties, like United States, let's say Republican and Democrat, and you've got a third specialized party. A third specialized party is quite healthy in developing countries that looks at large portion of the citizens and try to develop it. For example,